everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Come and eat. Now we want to get into Leviticus 15, and this is a law. This is the scripture talks about the laws of bodily discharges, and I'm not going to get into a lot of that. The bottom line is cleanliness. The bottom line is cleanliness is next to godliness. That's really what this is about. But I want to talk about the family purity laws. Many times there's these laws that and I get questions about this because those that are returning to the Hebrew roots of their faith, the Torah, especially the ladies, will look at these laws when it comes to the menstrual cycle and how does this all apply to me? Do I need to do all the things it mentions here? And you can go back and read that in Leviticus 15. I'm not going to read that, but blood comes out of women at certain times of the month when they're at a certain age, and it can be a mess. And blood is something that's very sacred. We've discussed that in previous Torah portions. It's very sacred to Elohim. It's something to be treated with a great deal of respect because of what it represents. The life is in the blood, and blood is shed. It's part of the sacrificial system. It points to redemption and atonement, and to life and death, and Yeshua's death on the cross, and all of these things. But I want to specifically address the question that many people have. How do these family purity laws affect me? Well, we know that Yeshua did not come to abolish the law. He said that in Matthew 15, verse 7. I'll get it. Matthew 5, verses 15 through 17. I know the place. Sometimes my brain gets ahead of my mouth. Did that ever happen to you? Anyway, it does happen sometimes. He says in verse 17 of Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill." Now, the word destroy literally there is the Greek word luo. It means to loosen or to undo or to unfasten or to destroy. The word fulfill is the word plerao, which means to expand or to bring into full fruition. A lot of people will read this and they think that he came to do away with the law, but that's not what he's saying. I did not come to loosen or to destroy the Torah, but to open it up and to expand it. It means he says it's more binding, it's more applicable today than it was then. He says, verse 18, "For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one yud or one tagin, one jot or tittle." A yud is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It looks like a little comma, and it stands for the letter Y, or it represents the letter Y. Not one jot or yud, Y-U-D is the Hebrew word for this letter in the alphabet, or one tittle, or this tagin, which means a little flourish, literally on a Hebrew letter, like the Hebrew tav, or chet, or dalet. Especially the dalet had a tav, that separated it from resh, the letter resh. Chet had one. Bet, the letter bet had one, a little flourish that kind of separates from the kaf. So anyway, these little flourishes actually were important on the letters, because if you didn't put that flourish on there, it would look like another letter and it would spell a different word. So he said, I did not come to let's see, "For shall I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one yud or tagin will by any mean," or tagin, one's plural, one's singular, I don't remember. But anyway, we have the word tittle here, "will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." In other words, till heaven and earth pass away. Well, heaven and earth are still here. So the law has not passed away. And he goes on to say, "Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So this is not Yeshua doing away with the Torah. It's affirming the Torah even in a greater capacity. Now we know that I get often asked, well, what laws were done away with in the Torah, that in the New Testament, that are not done in the Torah? And I say nothing. Nothing was done away with. Well, what about the sacrificial system? Sorry, it wasn't done away with. Go read the book of Hebrews. The sacrificial system was what were shadow pictures or signs that pointed forward to the cross. They were not the full Torah. Yeshua's death on the cross was the full Torah. I happen to have some flowers here on my a vase of flowers. It was my a week or so ago. It was our wedding anniversary, my wife and I, 26 years. And so I bought her some roses, and the roses were all tightly closed up, like a bud. You've seen a rose bud. This one's kind of open, but it was like this. And then these flowers are starting to wilt a little bit. But as the rose buds opened up, again, these are looking a little wilty, but the flower opened up and became fuller. This isn't a very full rose, but you get my point. You've all seen a rosebud, and you know what I'm talking about. So, in a sense, the sacrificial system was that tightened rosebud, and when Yeshua came, it opened up, and it became Him. He fulfilled it. His death on the cross is what all those things pointed to. Similarly, I use this analogy. You're driving down the freeway and down the interstate, and you come to a sign that says, whatever city, New York City or Los Angeles, or I live by Portland, 20 miles. Well, you don't stop at the sign and say, okay, we've arrived. You pull a car off the side of the road and go over and park next to the sign and say, okay, we've come to whatever our destination was. No, you say, okay, that's another 20 miles, and you stay in your car until you get there. And the sacrificial system was like that sign. It was not what it pointed to. It was a sign that pointed to something. And so when we get past the sign, the sacrificial system, again to Yeshua, that is what the full Torah was all about. That is the fullness, the plurao, the fullness of the Torah, the fulfilled part of the Torah. So that's why I say the Torah is more enforced today than it was then. So, and the book of Hebrews brings this out with regard to the sacrificial system as well as to the Levitical priesthood system. So how does this relate to the family purity laws? Well, okay, I gave you a little bit of tangential information that may not totally relate to the family purity laws, but there is a relationship here. What Yeshua is trying to teach us, well, first of all, as I said, He didn't come to do away with the Torah. So these family purity laws are still very important. However, we need to look at them in their proper context. When we go back and read, and this is a very important principle to follow, to understand when interpreting the Torah. When we go back and read the Torah, we have to realize that these laws were given to a specific people at a specific time in a specific cultural context. And some of those aspects are still relevant today and apply to us today. Some of them do not. And so therefore we can't necessarily do all of these things. Or maybe some of the issues that they were had to deal with then, we don't have to deal with anymore. Let me give you an example with regard to this. So when we go back, and the family purity laws basically says that when a woman is in her menstrual cycle, she is not to sit on the couch, she's not to sleep on the bed, she's not to touch somebody, she's not to have basically she needs to go outside the camp and become a hermit for a week or two during her menstrual cycle every month, depending on how long it takes. And then there's a ritual cleansing after that. So she's spending half of her time, or a week to 14 days out of her monthly cycle, outside living by herself, quarantined. What is the issue here? The issue here is the blood. We're not to touch menstrual blood. The blood is sacred. That's the issue. And so, with that in mind, let's discuss these issues. What are the conditions that that existed then compared to now when a woman goes through menstruation? Number one, do women still have menstrual cycles? Yes. So that obviously these laws still apply because women still have menstrual cycles. This hasn't changed. In this section of the Torah, it says a husband should refrain from physical sexual relations with their wife during this time. So, those conditions still exist. Husbands and women still have menstrual cycles. Husbands and wives still have physical relations, sexual relations. So, a husband is supposed to refrain for a variety of reasons. We won't go into that too much, but because he is not to touch her blood. That is an abomination. That is vile and profane. And he needs to withdraw himself from her, double entendre, if you will, from her at that time, to give her space as she's going through this time of emotional, as a life a potential life inside of her. An egg is being emitted from her body, an unfertilized egg, and there's a time of grief and sorrow that she goes through. He needs to back off, let her process, let her go through that emotional time, and give her space. So he needs to pull himself back and give her space to heal and recover from this, and exercise self-control. Very important. Men need to learn to have self-control. Their wives are not just sex machines to have whenever they want, whenever they feel like it. They have to exercise self-control and show some deference and patience and self-control. And that's a good thing for men to have to learn. So this hasn't changed. Now, with regard to the blood touching things such as the woman, her bedding, couches, other people, things in this arena have changed. We now have feminine hygiene products that keep the flow contained. These things didn't exist in antiquity. They did not exist. There was leakage. I hate to be graphic, but there was leakage. And they didn't have flush toilets and showers and running water and lots of paper products to keep themselves clean. Now, I maintain that because of all these products that women have, nobody even needs to see the blood. Nobody needs to come in contact with the blood. Nobody needs to even be exposed to it, because the hygiene products that we have are so excellent. Now, if you lived in a backwoods place where you didn't have access to these things, okay, it might be different. And maybe there's some places in the earth where people still live like that. I don't know. I've never been there. But for those of us that live in the modern ages, it's not an issue. Is it necessary for a woman to sequester herself during this time and become quarantined and live outside? Well, it might be a very good thing to do. But is it practical? I don't know. Women have jobs. They're in school. Who's going to take care of the kids? They don't have any children to watch over the kids. The husband, he's got to go to work. What are they going to do? I don't know. That's a good question. That's something that each person has to address for themselves. But again, we have good hygiene products, and so women don't need, blood does not need to come into contact with anybody. But bottom line is, a husband needs to be very understanding with his wife. He needs to refrain from physical relations with her, and he needs to be very understanding with her as she's going through this emotional time. He needs to be very understanding and extremely loving and caring for her and give her space. And again, control himself during this period of time until she is done with her monthly flow and not have any physical intimate relations with her. And that is my understanding of the family purity laws. You may have a different understanding. You may have a different way you want to fulfill that. But that is my understanding of that. And after years and years of having to teach about these things and carefully examining all sides of the issue, that's what I believe the Bible is teaching and how it relates to us today. I hope that blessed you and edified you. And until next time, blessings to you in the name of Yeshua, the Messiah. Shalom.
Call upon his name. He is near, he is near, he is near. Yeshua Hashem Behir Matzov Kerahu Yoto Karov Karov Yasov Rashad Darko Leishaven Machshevotav Yashovel Ad Hashem Yarbe is Yeshua Hashem Behim Matzo Kerahu Yota Karo Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon his name. He is near, he is near. Yeshua Hashem Behim Matzot Kerahu